Welcome to our second plenary session, Taking Innovation and Environmental Performance in the Oil Sands to the Next Level. Canada's Oil Sands Innovation Alliance, COSIA, is an alliance of oil sands producers focused on accelerating the pace of improvement in terms of environmental performance within Canada's oil sands through collaborative action and innovation. COSIA brings together leading thinkers from industry, government, academia, and the wider public to improve the measurability and accountability of environmental performance in the oil sands in 4 priority areas. I would like to take this opportunity to thank our gold partner, the Canadian Association of Petroleum Producers, CAPP, for their ongoing support of EDA and for sponsoring this session. Please welcome Kelly McTaggart, Community Engagement Advisor at CAPP, to say a few words about the organization and to introduce our next speaker.
Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us at the 2020 Alberta EDA Conference. My name is Kelly McTaggart, and I'm happy to introduce COSIA on behalf of the Canadian Association of Oil and Gas Producers. CAPP represents companies that explore for, develop, and produce natural gas and oil throughout Canada. Together, CAPP's members and associate members are an important part of a national industry with revenues from production of about $109 billion a year. CAPP's mission is to advocate for and enable economic competitiveness and a safe, environmentally and socially responsible performance. Environmental performance continues to be a key priority for the oil and gas sector in Canada. CAPP and member companies support climate policies that effectively manage greenhouse gases emissions while maintaining a vibrant and competitive oil and natural gas sector. In Canada, our sector has always been committed to protecting the environment and operates under one of the most stringent regulatory regimes globally. Energy development was founded in technology and innovation, and it continues to drive improved environmental performance and prosperity for Canadians. Compared to global competitors, Canada has one of the toughest climate policies based on price and stringency. In addition to leading policy, our sector has taken a leading role in developing innovative technologies that will support Canada's efforts to play a significant role in meeting global energy demand, while contributing to the important global ambition of greenhouse gas emissions reductions. This includes taking early action in all areas, spanning from methane emission reductions to the introduction of some of the first carbon taxes in the world. COVID-19 has presented many challenges to our daily life in the Canadian economy. As we look forward to the many phases of economic recovery, clean tech innovation in the oil and gas sector will provide a critical path for job creation, environmental performance, investment, and overall advancement of our industry in Alberta and Canada as a whole. With that said, it is my pleasure to introduce Wes Jickling from Canada's Oil Sands Innovation Alliance, also known as COSIA, to speak to the Made in Canada approach to clean tech innovation in the oil sands. COSIA is an alliance of the oil sands producers focused on accelerating the pace of improvement in environmental performance through collaborative action and innovation. The alliance was launched in 2012 and brings together leading thinkers from industry, government, academia, and the wider public. COSIA is taking innovation and environmental performance in the oil sands to the next level, having worked on over 1,100 innovation initiatives in the oil sands, including rethinking carbon through XPrize and monitoring methane emissions from space. Wes assumed the role of COSIA Chief Executive in August 2019. Prior to joining COSIA, Wes was the Chief Executive Officer of Innovation Saskatchewan and Deputy Minister of Intergovernmental Affairs for Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe. Wes has held senior roles in corporate, government, and international organizations, including United Nations postings in Brazil, Swaziland, Ukraine, and Sudan. Thanks again for joining us over the course of the week. I'll now pass it over to Wes to talk about COSIA, environmental performance, and the world-leading innovation that's taking place here at home in Canada's oil sands.
Thank you for that introduction, Kelly. Really appreciate that. And thank you to all of you for logging in today and spending a bit of time with me and with Canada's Oil Sands Innovation Alliance, or COSIA, to talk about environmental performance in the oil sands. And really what I wanted to talk to you all about today is really what the oil sands are doing to improve how they look after the environment. And more specifically, to talk about the science, the technology, the research that the oil sands companies in Alberta are doing, the lengths to which these oil sands companies are going to look after the environment and improve their environmental performance. I think that's a really important topic actually for Albertans, and particularly for folks like yourselves who are in the business of economic development in this province. Oil sands are the major economic driver in Alberta and likely in Canada. And it's important to understand what this industry is doing, what these companies are doing to look after the environment. Because in Canada, we take it very seriously, right? We apply a great amount of scrutiny, a great amount of focus and attention on the environmental performance of our industries, particularly the oil sands. And I think it's really important for all of us to understand and be informed about the lengths to which this industry goes, the oil sands go, to improve and innovate improved environmental performance. And so that's really the focus of what I want to talk about here today. Spend a few minutes with you and tell you about a few things. I guess I'll get a bit more specifically here off the top about what I want to tell you about. First, I'll tell you about COSIA. It's the organization that I work for. That's Canada's Oil Sands Innovation Alliance, and I'll explain why and how that's a one-of-a-kind organization, a one-of-a-kind way or model in the world for innovating and developing new technologies and looking after the environment. Secondly, I want to talk about some of the notable or some of the cool technologies and projects that we have ongoing through COSIA and in the oil sands to look after the environment, to improve our environmental performance. I want to talk to you about how the oil sands have North America's largest and most comprehensive environmental monitoring program. And at the end, I'll talk a little bit about how you and your partners and your local communities or your colleagues may get involved and participate in our model. So with that, what I'll do is start off by giving a very quick overview of what the oil sands are, how oil sands are produced, and really just give a quick overview. I'm sure that most of you likely know this already, but nevertheless, I think it's important just to do a quick cover off here, and we'll start by talking about where are the oil sands. Obviously located in northern Alberta. You can see there in the map. These actually make up the world's third largest reserves. And we've got another slide coming up here in just a moment, but that's important to know. This is a huge energy reserve. And, Canada, 96% of Canada's oil reserves are here shown on this map. What are they? What are the oil sands? Again, very quickly, not to make this into a science class or a science lecture. Really, the oil sands are a mixture of sand, water, clay, and bitumen at room temperature. That mixture or the oil sands you could shape it with your hand. If you have kids and your kids have ever played with or you've given them a gift of kinetic sand, similar to Play-Doh, that's sort of the texture. At some of the colder winter temperatures, the oil sands are solid, more like a rock rather than able to shape it with your hand. And so because of the unique makeup of the oil sands, it's not a case where you can produce oil from the oil sands like you could produce it from a conventional oil well. And again, here, just a quick note, it just puts Canada in perspective. Third largest reserve in the world. We're the fourth largest producer after countries like USA, Russia, and Saudi Arabia. So to my point about, very quickly, two ways that the oil sands are produced. Again, this isn't your conventional way of producing oil. The first way is called in situ, and that's an approach where we inject steam, so heat, into the reserve underground. That heat animates or gets the oil in the oil sands moving, and then it's pumped back to the surface in a separate well, a producer well. That's brought to the surface where it's further produced and produces. The bitumen is further processed and sent onward for marketing. The second way that oil's produced from the oil sands is through mining. And this is the situation where the ore or the resource or the oil sands are close enough to the surface that they can be mined, where you remove the overburden using big shovels and you remove the oil sands or the ore, and that's loaded into large trucks. The large trucks take that to processing facilities where we use warm water to separate the oil or the bitumen from the sand and clay. And just a quick photo here of some of that. And I'm sure that being Albertans, you'll have seen this before, but just some images of the large shovels and the trucks that we use to produce oil sands with the mining method. Just a couple of slides here, and this is the part where I do want to chat with you about and tell you about COSIA, Canada's Oil Sands Innovation Alliance. I said off the top that COSIA is a one-of-a-kind or unique in the world way of doing environmental innovation. And I'll tell you why that's the case and talk a little bit about why that's important for the oil sands. So COSIA is wholly owned by 9 Canadian oil sands producers. And these 9 producers, they're all, the logos are up on the screen there. They represent about 90% of production in the Alberta oil sands. And COSIA is focused on 4 priority areas: greenhouse gases, water, land, and tailings. And in each of those 4 areas, our companies, our owners, are, I would say, practicing extreme collaboration. And this has been going on since 2012. What I mean by extreme collaboration is they're sharing intellectual property with one another, right? These are 9 huge competitors sharing hard-earned intellectual property, sharing technology with one another, giving access and sharing their experts. They have a lot of subject matter experts and scientists and engineers, and they're sharing and providing access to one another's experts, sharing their knowledge, providing access to one another's sites and to their research labs. And that's not typical behavior of competitors, particularly competitors in the energy industry or in any industry. We're unaware of any other industry or group of competitors in the world in any industry that collaborate and work together and share in this way. And this happens at and through COSIA. So why do they do this? Why do these 9 competitors want to share intellectual property, share technology? They're doing it, really, it's about going faster, going further, lowering the costs, doing better, more and better environmental research, more and better environmental technology development together. As you can imagine, these are 9 companies producing in Alberta's oil sands. And a lot of them will have the same challenges, the same technical challenges in these 4 areas, the same technical challenges and science challenges, how to reduce greenhouse gases, how to recycle more water and be more efficient in water use. How do we reclaim land faster and return it to, boreal forest and reforestation and reclamation? How do we do that faster and more effectively and better? How do we better manage tailings? These are unique challenges, technical and scientific challenges shared by this group of competitors. And the acknowledgement was, if we get together and we share those challenges and we tackle those challenges together, what we end up doing is we share in the costs. We can do more research together instead of, all 9 of these companies doing the same research, answering the same questions, making the same, traveling the same road. They could take those steps and that journey together, sharing the cost, sharing the risk, doing more research, going faster, further, better together. And all of this, just to emphasize the point, all of this is focused on the environment. These 4, what we call environmental priority areas, really are the focus of COSIA. And I think we say internally, it's quite a Canadian, it's a very Canadian organization, a very Canadian way of looking after the environment, and a very Canadian way of heavy industry, or approach to heavy industry, is extreme collaboration, sharing of ideas and technologies and intellectual property, and sharing of our experts. And it's entirely focused on the environment, and it's one of a kind in the world. And so we're really quite proud of that. And I can tell you a little bit now about what we have achieved, and then I'll get into some of the examples of things we've achieved. So here's just some big numbers. Since 2012, this organization, or this alliance known as COSIA, we have the technologies and the research that's been shared through COSIA. The cost of that is cumulative cost about $1.6 billion. There's 1,000 and almost 1,100 technologies that have been contributed and shared, environmental technologies contributed and shared among our shareholder companies, those 9 companies. We have 225 projects underway right now, and the cost of those active projects is $621 million. That is a ton of environmental technology research and development. We do this, there's really 2 things happening at COSIA, 2 ways that we innovate, so to speak. One is, the 9 companies, they will share information, share technologies. It's really an inward-looking conversation, a really inward-looking collaboration about how can we help one another internally, these 9 shareholders, these 9 companies. That's the first way. And the second way is where COSIA and the 9 companies, we go out into the world, into Alberta, into Canada, and beyond, and we seek out what we would call, we look for the best and brightest ideas or solutions or innovators, and try to attract them and bring them in and get them working on those scientific and technical questions or challenges that I referred to earlier. So that's really the 2 ways that we're doing this, and you can see some of the results here. In terms of what that translates into in environmental performance or improvements that we've achieved from this way of working together, GHG reductions, we've made a significant reduction in the intensity of GHG per barrel. What that means is the amount of GHG emissions per barrel of oil produced in Alberta's oil sands. And that has decreased by 20% between 2009 and 2018. Those are the latest numbers that we have. And that's a significant reduction, 20% reduction in the emissions, GHG emissions per barrel. We're not seeing that type of trend line from other major producers in the world. And so that's something that we're quite proud of. And that's largely down to innovation and technology development that's occurred. And we see that continuing. The technology development, the innovation, the continuous improvement in the oil sands, we see that GHG intensity, GHGs per barrel, continuing to trend downward over the coming decade. And market analysts and experts suggest that the further reduction that's possible here is 16 to 23% further in the coming decade. So we're quite excited about that, quite proud of that. Another improvement that we've seen is in the area of fresh water use intensity. So the amount of fresh water that we use to produce a barrel of oil, that's what we're referring to when we say fresh water use intensity. So we have reduced, since 2012, we have reduced freshwater use intensity by 46% at our in situ operations and by 18% at our mining operations. Those are significant increases, again, achieved through technology, innovation, and continuous improvement. Maybe I'll just shift gears now. I've told you who we are and why we're unique in the world and the way we operate and some of the high level accomplishments or progress that we've made. And now we can, I guess, pivot to and talk about some of the technologies, some of these projects that COSIA and its owner companies or its shareholder companies have undertaken together. And really, you'll recall that there's about 1,100 technologies or research projects that we've done together. This is just a handful of those. Obviously can't go through all of those. And so the ones I'll share with you today, I think are quite interesting. And my hope is that these will, some of these will stick in your mind and will stay with you. Just so that I guess they're good indicators of the lengths to which the oil sands are going to develop environmental and clean technologies. I'll start with the greenhouse gas priority area. You'll recall that there's 4 areas that COSIA works on: greenhouse gases, water, land, and tailings. And I'll go through each of those and just give you a couple of examples which we think are pretty interesting. The first one, which I'll quickly mention, this is a big one. So just a quick word about carbon capture and storage in the oil sands. One of the world's biggest carbon capture facilities is in Alberta. That's the Quest facility. The world's biggest CO2 pipeline is also in Alberta. It's the Alberta Carbon Trunk Line, and that'll carry about over 14 megatons of CO2 per year. And right now, COSIA and its shareholder companies, the oil sands companies, are researching and advancing carbon capture sequestration in a number of ways. There's a suite or a number of technologies that I think fit into the bucket of carbon capture and storage. And so researching geological storage options, researching transportation of CO2, looking at new and interesting ways of technologies to capture CO2, including technology called molten carbonate fuel cells. Hydrogen is part of the mix and are obviously looking and exploring that as a technology. And I think all of this research and all of this focus and science around carbon capture and storage stems from the recognition that it's going to take a number of technologies. There isn't a silver bullet to significantly reduce CO2 emissions. It's going to take a number of different technology families or a number of different pathways. And CCS, carbon capture and storage, is a really important one of those. And as such, our members are are looking and researching that as a priority technology. Two other quick technologies here to mention. The COSIA Carbon XPrize. I'm sure people or some of you will be familiar with the XPrize. The XPrize is a large global innovation competition where a huge sum of money is offered for the world's best and brightest to compete and develop technology to solve a big global challenge. And you've seen, the SpaceX Prize, where SpaceX and Elon Musk were competing to be the first private sector manned flight in space, I believe. That's the XPrize Foundation. That's the XPrize. Well, COSIA is currently running an XPrize, the Carbon XPrize, which we're very proud of and very excited about. And what the XPrize is, or the Carbon XPrize is, the question or the challenge, the global challenge is, hey, is there a way, are there things that we can make with waste CO2? Can we take the CO2 from natural gas facilities? Oil sands consumes a lot of natural gas, but could we take the CO2 and convert that into a new product or new products? So the question that we really put to the globe, so to speak, or we issued through the Carbon XPrize was, who can take the largest amount of CO2 from a natural gas facility? Who can take the largest amount of CO2 or carbon and create or produce the highest value product? So take the waste CO2 from a natural gas plant and create the most valuable products with it. It was a $20 million prize. We had hundreds of applicants. These were shortlisted. And right now we're in year 5 of this competition. And we have 5 shortlisted finalists that are all plugged into a test center. It's called the Alberta Carbon Conversion Test Center. It's in southeast Calgary. And these 5 companies are there. They're plugged into a CO2 stream from a natural gas plant. And they right now are testing their technologies, trying to show that they can use the highest amount of CO2 to produce the highest value product. So we've got companies there that are developing green concrete, very low emission concrete. We've got companies there that are looking at nanotubes or nanofibers for building materials. We've also got a company in there that's making vodka from CO2. Very interesting. A huge array of possibilities. And the importance there for us in doing that was this whole idea of carbon conversion, that family of technologies, of carbon conversion technologies, has huge potential in this global effort, national effort to reduce emissions, huge potential. But it's a very young technology. And COSIA and its members really wanted to give this a shove out onto the global stage, to give it profile, to get this first generation of technologies and products profile and incentives, and really scratch deeply under the surface. And this is a technology that will continue to evolve. But we're very proud of the fact that we were the ones kind of shoving this out into the global stage. So you'll see and hear, hopefully in the next coming months, it's been delayed a little bit by COVID, but you'll see some announcements and sort of winners going to be selected and announced in the coming months, likely in early 2021. Another one that we're really excited about and proud of, and I think this one shows the lengths to which the oil sands go to in order to manage and reduce GHGs. This one is called GHG SAT, and this one stems back to 2016 and earlier, when a Canadian company out of Montreal called GHG SAT had a technology, satellite technology, where they could measure GHG emissions, more specifically methane emissions from space. And they launched a satellite in 2016. COSIA and a subset of its shareholders, Canadian Natural, Suncor, and Imperial, are all involved in this one. And we're involved in that first launch. That's why there was a rocket ship a couple slides ago. But what it does is it provides real-time, high-resolution measurement of methane emissions from individual industrial sites. And the first iteration, the very first generation of that technology went up in 2016. Like any technology that's brand new like that, it takes a bit of iteration, it takes a bit of refining. And now there's a second satellite that went up this summer, both GHG-SAT. So now there's 2 GHG-SAT, emission measuring satellites passing over the oil sands every 2 weeks, and multiple other sites in the world. And what that does is it allows us to measure. It's another way for us to be very precise and accurate in measuring emissions from our sites, particularly the fugitive emissions from tailings ponds and fugitive methane emissions from the mine face. Very proud that the oil sands were the earliest of backers of this technology. We continue to be involved. We continue to work with this company and to get as accurate a measurement as possible. It's a key part of any effort to reduce emissions, is knowing exactly where they are and the extent to which, and you have a baseline of data to work against. Very proud of that one, and it's been in the news a fair bit lately if you haven't seen it. Just a quick slide here. These are just 3 of the technologies that we're working on. Again, there's hundreds that we have collaborated on and worked together among our competitors, our companies, over the last several years. These are just, and I'll just go quickly through these. These are the five of the key pathways to reducing GHG emissions in the oil sands. And I thought it was important to share these with you. A lot of discussion in public and in governments and in families and in schools and the media about what are we going to do to reduce GHG emissions. So these are some of the priority pathways that the oil sands are pursuing. There's a story to tell in each of these areas: carbon capture, conversion, and storage, natural gas decarbonization. Right? We use a lot of natural gas, so is there a way we can take the carbon molecule out of the natural gas before it's consumed for steam production? Energy efficient design, fugitive emission measurement and management along the lines of what we just talked about with satellites, and reinventing the extraction process. Are there other ways to use less steam or less hot water, less natural gas to produce from the oil sands? Move a little bit more quickly now. I did just want to spend a fair bit of time on greenhouse gases because it is such a big topic of discussion, very important discussion. How can we significantly reduce GHG emissions? So I wanted to give you a sense of some of the things that we're working on there. Water, equally important. There's a ton of work happening at COSIA and amongst our member companies on water. So how do we reduce the amount of fresh water we use to produce oil sands? There's a lot that I could profile here, but I'll just go quickly and talk about a couple of those. Maybe the one on the right there. This is a big, and it kind of, again, it feels a little bit like a science class just for a minute. This is called the Lake Mesocosm facility. And that's a really convoluted way of saying this is an outdoor lab located in Vegreville. It's run by Inotech, which is part of the Alberta government. And what this is there's 30 ponds. You can kind of see it there. There's 30 little ponds in this huge outdoor lab. Each of those ponds is about 14 cubic meters. And what each of them is doing is it basically replicates a tailings pond or a wetland in the oil sands region. And what it allows us to do at this outdoor lab is to test and compare and experiment with different ways of managing tailings, different ways of purifying water and reducing toxicity of tailings water. And because we have 30 of these ponds, we can test and compare and experiment multiple approaches at once. And so very proud of that. It's a great asset that we've got. I thought I would just mention it. Vegreville is not only famous for the giant Easter egg, it's also famous for its Lake Mesocosm facility, well, at least for some of us. Another one we're doing, and this is one where we've gone out, found the best and brightest, and got them working on some of the technical or scientific questions we have. And this is a group of entrepreneurs or engineers from the Netherlands, and they call themselves OPE, and they're using microbes. Their technology or their approach is to use microbes, the smallest life form on Earth, and train them, so to speak, train these small life forms to clean up and consume the contaminants in processed water or tailings water, and how that can be applied to reduce fouling, to increase energy efficiency, to increase water recycling capabilities at our oil sands sites. So again, I guess the point there is it's an international reach. We have huge technologies and big facilities like the Lake Mesocosm facility, but we also are dealing at the opposite end of the spectrum and dealing with microbes as a potential solution for some of those science and technical questions that we have. Maybe just very quickly mention here, this one is on a Suncor site in Firebag. Anyway, I guess it doesn't look that terribly exciting from the outside, but this is really an important development. This is a water technology testing facility. This is essentially a place where technology developers for water purification or water treatment can plug in. It's basically a plug and play. It's more complicated than that, but if you have a technology and you want to test it out, optimize it, improve it, you have here developed through COSIA a laboratory or facility to plug and play, test your technology at the Water Technology Development Center. Anyway, something that COSIA is very proud of and excited about. Moving now to the third area of land. Again, there's lots of technologies and science and research that has been developed here and we continue to work on. Interest here, or the intent here, is to be world leaders in land reclamation, the quality of our land reclamation and the efficiency or the speed of our land reclamation. And I think we have a good claim to that title, and I'll show you a couple of projects here. Maybe I'll just talk about one here. That one is, growing forests faster. And it's really, particularly with some of the areas that have been mined, that mining approach where we use shovels and trucks, that needs to be returned to boreal forest. And so how do we do that, as efficiently and as quickly and as, high quality to a high standard of quality as possible? Lots of research and technologies and approaches to do that. The other one is compensation lakes. And really what's happening here, and I've been up there and seen some of these, they're really impressive. And these are lakes that have been redeveloped or constructed by the oil sands companies to provide fish habitat that was removed or disturbed by oil sands mining. And so, over decades, we have subject matter experts and scientists that are looking at this and building these. And so we have these huge lakes, compensation lakes or man-made lakes, so to speak. And they've thought about the correct blend of gravel and peat and the kinds of underwater formations that fish like and they need for feeding and breeding and wintering. And what we're seeing is that the native species of fish are coming back. We are having success on these, and there's a 360 tour in much more detail online. But again, it's something we're very proud of. The last of the four areas that I'll chat with you about is tailings. When we produce oil sands from mining using shovels and trucks, one of the byproducts, like any mine anywhere in the world of any commodity, there's tailings, and that's the leftover, the byproducts, the sand, the water, the clay, and the residual bitumen left over from that process. And so what we try to do in this area is reduce the tailings volumes. We accelerate the reclamation time of how those can de-water and settle, increase the water recycling from the tailings, and decrease the GHG emissions associated with tailings. It's a huge spend for our members, and there's a lot here that our members, the oil sands companies, collaborate on. Just one example, and there's so many examples to choose from, but I'll just talk quickly about the filter press. By applying mechanical force to the tailings stream, we're able to remove 75% of the water from the tailings stream. It can be used for recycling. What it leaves behind is a dense soil cake, as opposed to something more liquid. And so this takes, what it does is it allows us to I guess, process or reduce the water and have it settle out in a couple of hours, as opposed to, several years. It just really accelerates that process to hours from something that would take years. Number of companies are collaborating on that and demonstrated it in on site. Maybe the last point here that I'll really make before kind of opening the door to folks getting involved or exploring a little bit further COSIA, I think it's an important point to make here around our continuous improvement and how we monitor and how we track what's going on in the region around the oil sands sites. And this happens through something called the Oil Sands Monitoring Program, OSM program for short. And again, this is a very impressive, I would say, a very Canadian thing. We have a program responsible. It's been running for 8+ years. COSIA has a coordinating role on the industry side in this. This is a program where we have about 1,100 individual sites being monitored in the oil sands region. We're measuring and monitoring air data. We're gathering water data at these sites. Right, that's groundwater and surface water. We're gathering wildlife data in terms of caribou and other animals and fish and so on that live in the area. And again, 1,100 sites. And this is all overseen by, this program has an annual work plan to use that data and ask questions and understand the effect of the oil sands on the surrounding region. That program is overseen by, it's two orders of government, the Alberta government and the federal government. There's 14 local communities represented in the governance or the oversight of this, and all oil sands producers. It's quite a diverse and quite a broad oversight. It takes extreme collaboration and discussion and cooperation to have that group kind of work together and utilize this program to understand what's happening, what the impacts are on the surrounding region. And one of the things that happens here is we've seen over 700 research papers, academic and research papers, be published and made available to the public. Very transparent program. This is the largest, most comprehensive environmental monitoring program in North America, if not the world. And it's been going on for years. It's a very Canadian approach to this, to have communities, governments, and industry all overseeing how this operates. We're very proud of that. It's often overlooked when we're talking about the oil sands. Maybe I'll just close there. There are ways, if you want to visit our website, you can see on our website some of the challenges or some of the research opportunities. Here's a couple of them here. I won't get into these here, but if you or partners or clients or constituents have ideas or innovations to answer some of these questions, we welcome those. Please visit our website. There's just a ton of information available on there if you're so inclined. Maybe I'll just close by saying, we've got a lot of great stories to tell, and we're telling those stories primarily through social media, and would just be really appreciative if we could have folks see and also share our stories. So I'll stop there. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much, Wes, for the presentation today, and thank you to CAPP once again for sponsoring the session today. We know how important the energy industry is, certainly to Strathcona County, to Alberta's industrial heartland, and to Alberta collectively. Thank you for all of the innovative work that the Canadian Oil Sands Innovation Alliance and the Canadian Association of Petroleum Producers are doing in this area. We greatly appreciate it. Now I would like to invite all of you to join us in the Zoom room for some live questions and answers. All you have to do is click on the Zoom link on your screen, and we'll see you there.